Okay, so welcome to this Hangout on Air as part of the Learn xAPI MOOC. I'm Sam Burrow, and today I'm joined by Darren Wallace and Dan Sivak from CDSM. So guys, could you tell us a little bit about CDSM and what you guys actually do?
First of all, I guess I'm Darren Wallace. That's Dan Sivak.
Hi, thanks for the invite. Glad to be talking today. I guess a little bit background on CDSM. My name's Dan Sivak. I'm the managing director of the company. We're a learning technology company, and we have quite a varied portfolio. We've come from PubSec UK education sector really, and have been working with learning technology about 15, 16 years now. But we also work in the commercial corporate sector as well, with in the automotive sector, and a number of quite diverse portfolio in terms of clients and requirements. But clearly for us, I think our first passion and our area of expertise is both formal and informal learning experiences, utilising learning technologies, web-enabled learning technologies. For the last 10, 12 years, it's been innovation. So that's primary phase and secondary phase case schools. And that throws up some really interesting conundrums for us, because it's an environment where typically formal learning is obviously highly valued and is a key outlet of the work that we do with schools in the UK. But it's obviously a hotbed of informal learning opportunities as well. In that sense, being learning technology and providing learning platforms and all of those tools that you'd expect to find in learning platform environments, we have 24-hour, 7 days a week conversations, social conversations going on around learning with both teachers and students. And that creates a really interesting mix and alchemy that we have to track and look at and understand, and try and derive some value out of whether it be informal or formal learning situations. So the constraint to date has been, in some regards, school, conventional school, and how you set up a learning environment and track it and assess it. And obviously with the onset of Project TinCan and xAPI and the work that we've been doing with a number of services, new opportunities are available to us to really stretch and push our learning technologies and the learning assessment model. So that's really the interest for CDSM, and that's why we're here.
Fantastic. So Darren, we had a brief conversation last week, and you were telling me a bit about the kind of work that you're doing in this area. And one of the major projects was something called the Hub project. Can you tell us a bit about that, please?
Yeah, so Hub is commissioned by Welsh Government. It's an initiative to provide learning platform tech in every school in Wales, every student, every pupil. There were two parts to the bid. The first part was in sort of conventional learning platform technology. We got involved. When did we get involved? Maybe 2 years ago now.
About 18 months, yeah. About 18 months.
And our job was really to provide a content repository that gave access to thousands of learning resources that have been developed over the last 10 years in Wales. So you can imagine the sort of range of content that we're talking about there. We're talking about 10 years ago, HTML, shockwave content in places, there are Word documents, there are PDFs, there are Flash objects, and these are really mixed quality, to be honest, and they were originally produced by NGFL, National Grid for Learning. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah,
I'm right there.
Yeah.
And our job was to come in and really provide a fast way to mine this huge wealth of content, and help people discover content. The problem that they had was the previous sort of the previous way of browsing that content. It was very hierarchical. It was pretty much a folder structure, where a piece of content lived in Key Stage 3, geography, volcanoes, and that's where it sat. And that was the only sort of taxonomic way of defining what that content was. So we ended up with, you can imagine over 10 years how that structure grew and crept and all the rest of it. So we had ghettos of knowledge. We had parts of that. If you didn't know that taxonomy, if you didn't know where in that folder structure you had to go and to find certain bits of content. There were bits of content that were never being visited. So we shook things up a little bit, and we've provided a new way to browse that content. We mined the content. We extracted as much metadata from that as possible as we could, and presented it using modern non-SQL databases to provide new ways of searching for and surfacing that information. So that's the first phase of the project that we were involved with. So I remember coming from a background where we provided learning platform technologies to schools for, Dan says, in various guises over the last sort of 15 years. There are some real, for a start, it's a national project. So we're talking about, we have to be able to facilitate access for 500,000 users, which is significantly larger than your usual, even local authority deployment. So we're talking about lots and lots of users, potentially very high concurrent access to this very diverse body of knowledge. So lots of new things there, lots of things that are different for us. Some restrictions in terms of we don't have access to all the MIS data you would usually have in one of those classic learning platform deployments. So we have to be creative about how we group users together, how we give access to content and things of that sort. So that's where we've kind of been to date. More recently, we're starting to roll out our content development and authoring tools, which allow users to curate content and really repurpose that body of knowledge that we've resurfaced in the repository. So now, rather than just having our users consume that information, we've given them the tools through a playlist tool, as you mentioned, to reorganize that content, to curate things into playlists, which are really bringing content to existing content from the repository, but also new content from all around the web and files that you can upload, and providing new learning contexts using our content authoring tools.
So is that the teachers or the students or both who are doing the curating on that?
Students can curate for themselves, so they can gather content for themselves to use as reading lists, revision lists, things of that sort. At the moment, they can't share to the community. It's very sort of softly catchy monkey. The teachers only at the moment are able to author content and commit it. But the plan is to let students do so as well. And the challenge there is really the checks and balances we have in place to protect for data protection and to protect our users with every new feature that's rolled out is significant an entire nation rollout. So, but yeah, the plan is to let everybody become a curator of content and also an author of content, and really to crowdsource knowledge so that we can both extract as much value out of that existing body of content as we can, but also allow every practitioner to have very simple tools to put new content together. Now, looking at that sort of big picture, we couldn't have done that through a conventional SCORM platform arrangement. It just wouldn't work. SCORM is very bad at certain things. I don't mean to sound bitter there. You can tell I've been working with it for 50 years. But we know what its strengths are, and it's certainly your average conventional learning platform wouldn't have supported a 500,000 user rollout, wouldn't have supported the offline and online activities that we want to support. And Dan will talk a little bit more about where we come from a teaching and learning background. But when we're talking about constructivist learning, and stepping on Dan's toes there, that's quite difficult to facilitate using just SCORM. Whereas if we want to track social activity, group activity, and collaboration, and use that to inform the learning journey of the users, then xAPI is really offering us brand new opportunities there.
So you're using xAPI to support a constructionist or constructivist model of learning then for your users?
We have a very real aspiration to do so.
Right.
In our environment, there's those blurring of boundaries between formal and informal learning opportunities that I talked about earlier. And then you have inevitably the people that matter in terms of the decision makers within the organisations we have to work with at a national scale, our head teachers, senior leadership teams, Welsh Government, regional consortia that design school improvement and raising attainment programs that Welsh Government have in place. So there's a tension between the claims, if you like, of what we can achieve through learning technology with the xAPI and whether they're legitimately auditable by inspection services, by school improvement services, by external accreditation bodies. That whole inevitable discussion around evidencing the learning and about us saying with the xAPI, with the whole movement, the new specification, we have an opportunity to online and offline assess. We have an opportunity to ask questions and only provide scaffolding and guidance to let the learner inquire and understand and debate and enter into discourse. So yeah, truly constructivist in its approach, but we've got a battle on our hands, I think, in terms of justifying and the legitimacy of the outcome.
So that sounds like a really big challenge in conceptually knowing or feeling that this is the right way to go, and that you've got the tools that you could demonstrate the things that the authorities need you to, but actually being able to convince them that you've got that when you haven't done it before. Is that a big challenge, and how are you dealing with that?
The challenge is the exciting part, because it's almost like the secret formula, isn't it? I think once we get it, and we'll stumble across it at some stage because we're working very hard at it, there will be a series of cross-references between offline and online, between those legitimate conventional scores that students get on a multiple choice or a true and false activity or on a drag and drop activity, and then the less clearly causal relationships between those offline activities or those online activities that are merely registering a piece of data because Sam has gone and entered into a forum, or Sam has so therefore discussed it. The evidence of whether Sam has reflected before he's made a statement that has value in terms of pushing an outcome in the learning conversation, particularly with constructivism as a model, is an interesting one to legitimate. So it takes participation from those bodies, A, to understand the new model, B, to accept it, and I think C, to participate in using those tools in the right way, to understand that their moderation responsibilities involve them accessing and contributing to that process, that social process.
Yeah. So do you think xAPI is in a way an enabler of legitimizing different models of learning like this, potentially?
It's a site for the battle, and we have to win the battle.
Yeah.
So we're having to do things like if we're going to change practice in formal education in schools in Wales, we have to prove that the tools that we provide at least have parity with SCORM. So people expect to see the same sort of mark books. They expect to see the same sort of graphs when you're looking at a classroom of kids and you want to see where everybody is on a well-defined piece of work. And we have to justify the tools that we're giving them and the new activities that we're giving them are positively affecting attainment, which is alchemy in itself. So we've got lots more opportunities to capture learning activity, but every step of the way, we have to present the evidence for the results of that learning activity in a way that's familiar to the practitioners. So it's almost like a lot of what we're doing at the moment is almost translating the Brave New World into a set of reports, for example, which are very familiar to those practitioners that have been looking at MIS data for the last 15 years. So it's no good just saying, let's see a news feed of Darren discussed this, Darren visited this web page, Darren did such and such. At some way, that stream of activity has to feed into a report for us that the teacher understands and say, well, look, last year they were getting 60%, now they're getting 70%. The extra mile to justify every change in practice that we're suggesting.
Yeah.
Which is good fun. I don't mean to sound so, it's really interesting. And there's some huge technical challenges for us in terms of using a law instead of a relational database, for example, just in generating the kind of reports that people are familiar with. So when you're dealing with mining a stream of activity, in order to get a whole class classroom of activity. So you've got 30 kids in the class, and you've got to, in some way, for how they're doing in maths, you've got to mine that stream of activity and turn it into a map that people understand. And that's just a new type of reporting. It has new implications on scale for us, for example, how we do that for such large groups of stuff.
So, what's your vision for where this increased use of data could go once you get kind of past the foundation level of being able to replicate what people expect? Do you have a kind of sort of vision of the future of how teachers and education in general might be able to make better use of the data that they collect?
I think, first of all, in Wales, there's a massive driver towards school improvement. And one is that data is critical. So data informs the practices that necessarily inform and improve school performance. So right there's an open door. So what we've described as resistance is not resistance, it's typical resistance, it's cultural. It's cultural. They're used to something. They need something, but they need to understand the argument and get used to new things. I think evidence is the key word. Our vision is evidence, and really, it's about fighting those battles about what is legitimate evidence, and it's the old correlation and causation argument. But I think whether you're in a classroom, whether you're in a department, organisation, or you're a multi-sited organisation. The notion, whether it's in commercial, corporate, or pub sector, is we're past competency and we're into capability now. We want to build capability into people, and that's about a continuous learning culture, and that's about continuous learning. And the only way that we could consider learning in the workplace is having something that's always switched on and always recognising and acknowledging that activities, whether formally or informally, are valuable and contribute to a body of evidence that legitimizes what you claim you are, what you claim you're capable of, what you do in your daily work life, what you do in your school career, your academic career. So in that sense, we're kicking the wheels on everything, but the vision is evidence, and the vision at scale is big data. And the only way that we can, it's all the old tricks, making that, is visualization, it's patterns, it's trends, and it's representing a cause and effect that correlates. So it's all of that good stuff, and that's an ongoing process that will take time. But we've got a project environment, we've got a set of technologies that will enable us to do that. What would have been the opportunity before the xAPI? I don't know. I don't have an answer for that.
We have to. I mean, we're looking at the same sort of stuff that most of the community are. So we're really invested in open badges. We're really invested in this and how that can be tracked through a whole range of activities. But something that we've got to do in schools, for example, is if we've got a feed of information coming from various sources about a user and about the activities, we also have to provide tools for the assessors, whether that's teachers or whether it's people in school improvement, to ratify some of those activities. So it's not just recording that somebody's visited a website and made a comment on it. We have to almost provide a tool for the teacher then to look at that piece of evidence and then star it or give it a thumbs up and basically say, well, actually, yes, this piece of evidence actually does build towards this goal, this particular type of reward that the user's working towards. So it's about us providing tools, not only that track the user, but also, I guess, it's oversight, because
external verification.
Yeah. So the difference is from when we're participating in the MOOC, we're very learning, which is great. But when you're dealing with schools and in foundation phase right up to GCSE, we're still in an environment where oversight and moderation is important. So it's like a two-tier thing. We want to work towards badges, we want to work towards awards, but we have to give moderation and tools for oversight that give the thumbs up at some of those pieces of evidence. I don't know what your opinion is. Does that kind of make sense in terms of the difference between the school environment and what we're doing?
Yeah, I mean, that's a sounds like a fascinating challenge as well, because I imagine with xAPI, you're generating so many more statements of well, recording of activity that people are doing. And if teachers are going to have to go in and then moderate at least some of that, I'd imagine there might be a bit of pushback on that from them.
Absolutely. And so we're looking at things like companion apps to go alongside our content. We have to do that because, as you say, teachers are time poor is the phrase that we usually use, I'd say. So I mean, if we're going to ask them to, the potential is that we can make their lives a lot easier, because we can put the power to do this moderation in the palm of their hands if we do it right. If we do it wrong, then we're introducing a bunch of extra noise and overhead and pain to people that are already incredibly busy. So user experience is something that we're really learning. We're learning a lot dealing with this community in terms of having to provide prototypes to all the user flows that we go through. We're working with groups of teachers and digital leaders in Wales, and that's been a real learning curve for us as well, in terms of, as you know, designing user experience is so nuanced. There's no, it's alchemy. You know, sometimes you put something in people's hands that
snake oil.
It looks as if it should just work, and people don't take to it. And that's going to be critical if we're going to get really change practice in Welsh schools, which is what we want to do. We really want to provide tools that make it exciting to track all this extra information rather than a pain in the neck.
Yeah.
So just providing content doesn't do it. Just providing a platform doesn't do it. Just providing tools for mobile devices don't do it. It's the whole ecosystem that has to fit together in order to keep the wheels turning. And it's about making that. And what we want to do is provide contemporary tools. I mean, the problem we used to see all the time is that when kids went into school, they were working with software that looked like it was designed by, I'm trying to think of polite ways of doing this, software that looks like it was designed by people who work in spreadsheets, and then they'd go on Facebook or Twitter. Why would a child or why would a student get excited about their learning journey in school when it's not representative or contemporary?
Yeah.
And their contemporary activity is social, contemporary activity is all over the web, and it's not confined to the classroom, and that's what we've got to capture.
Fantastic. I think that is a really great way for us to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been fascinating. If anyone wants to catch up with you, and I'm sure there'll be lots of comments because we'll put this into the MOOC, but what's the best way for them to contact you if they want to talk about any more of this, if you're willing to talk about any more of this?
Yeah, well, as you can tell, we're happy to waffle about this as much as you like. I guess, what's our Twitter address? CDSM_learning.
Yeah.
We'll share our Twitter, our vet, and our personal Twitter addresses through the MOOC, and you can reach us on the website or email us, and we'll share those details with you.
Fantastic. Really appreciate you taking the time this morning to tell us about that. It's really great stuff.
No problem, Joe. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.